Today, India's manufacturing is roughly about $300 billion out of a GDP of $2 trillion, 15%. And we import roughly $90 billion of manufactured products every year. Now, these manufactured products are fundamentally capital goods, equipments, products required for railways, product required for the defense, and products required for infrastructure, power plants, and all those kinds of things. More than 60% of these products can be made in India with today's technology. And almost 100% of these products can be made in India in the next 5 years with technologies and capacities that exist to a fairly large extent, require a little bit of topping up in both technology and capacity. Let's look at where do we stand in the nations that surround us, both the developed nations as well as the developing nations as far as manufacturing is concerned. I have borrowed this data. This is not my data, but I have borrowed this data from one of the consulting companies' report that came out on manufacturing. Now, countries are divided largely in 3 groups. The first group is what they call as factor-driven economy. Low wages, poor technology, very low level of activity. And there are 3 countries in that area. And India is at the lowest of those 3 countries, India, Bangladesh, and the Philippines. The second phase in most development of most nations is to move from a factor-driven economy to an efficiency-driven economy. This is where you start excelling in manufacturing. So if you looked at Brazil, South Africa, Malaysia, Thailand, I mean, these economies 15, 20 years ago were even behind us in terms of where we are. But they have started moving ahead based on creating efficiencies in their processes to drive manufacturing. And third, the set of countries largely in the developed world are innovation-driven economies. This is the United States, Germany, Japan, Korea, South Korea, and many others. If you look at India's positioning, if India has to achieve what the goals that have been set by our Prime Minister, by the government, 25% of GDP to be achieved in manufacturing from the current 15%, and let's say it takes, although the government's goal is to achieve this in 2022, 2023, but even if you take 2025, which is 10 years from now, even if you assume the lowest rate of growth in our GDP by 2025, India's GDP will be somewhere in the region of $5 or $6 trillion. And if manufacturing was to be 25% of $6 trillion, you're looking at something like a $1.5 trillion manufacturing sector from the current $300 billion sector. So you're looking at a 5 times growth in manufacturing in 10 years. Now, where exactly is this growth coming from? It's not going to come from automobiles. It's not just going to come from pharmaceuticals. Obviously, it needs to come from many different sectors of the manufacturing economy that we are simply not present. If you look at this chart, the red underlined areas of manufacturing are areas where India is almost absent. The areas where we are doing extremely well, pharmaceuticals, computer and peripheral equipments, consumer electronics like audio, video equipment, televisions, household appliances, automotive, auto components, you will notice that all these areas are 100% run by the private sector. And every red area out there is 100% run by the state sector. So I don't want to draw a research thesis to say state sector is bad and the private sector is good. But here are the facts. And obviously the growth has to come in those red areas. Now, to develop India's advanced manufacturing industries, what do you really need? It's not rocket science. It's something that you've heard very often. You need talent, or skilled manpower, whatever you want to call it. You need a high connectivity with academic institutions to do R&D. This concept of doing R&D within your own factory without connection to the external world, and then somebody from Department of Science and Technology coming down to inspect whether you got a machine there or you got a building there, only after which you get this deduction for taxes, is the most absurd thing I have ever seen. But that is India. And third, you need to have a focus on futuristic technologies. Technology is changing at an extremely rapid pace. If you go to California today, agriculture is completely controlled by computers and drones. There's hardly a person in a farm. Drones have 3 to 4 cameras, one sensing the air, one sensing the temperature, one sensing the moisture, and one something else, photosynthesis. And it automatically goes through a computer system with algorithms to tell exactly what inputs are required. And they've been able to increase the yield, the output on the agricultural production by almost 30%, while reducing manpower to almost zero. The difference is, in the United States, you can buy a drone. You have laws that allow you to use a drone below a certain height. You have laws that give you the frequency to run, transmit, and receive signals. In India, you can't do any of this, because if you even try to do this, you'll land up in jail. This is how behind we are. Every country in the world has set up, in the last 2 to 3 years, a high focus on creating new manufacturing technologies. And I mean, every country has taken different approaches, but the approaches have one similarity: create clusters, involve industry, involve educational institute, involve universities, involve customers, involve research organizations, and the government. And put it all this together and allow it to function in a very autonomous fashion without any controls from the system. So this is the thrust that the United Kingdom is putting on high-value manufacturing. They call it the Catapult HVM program. And they have created something like 7 catapults connected with different universities: Birmingham, Warwick, some in Scotland. And right from materials to advanced technologies, almost everything is covered. 1/3 of the funding is given by the government. 2/3 of the funding comes from industry partners. And they have no problems in accepting industry partners from outside the UK. This is what the United States is doing. President Obama, I think 2 years ago, put a major thrust on bringing back manufacturing in the United States, create a national network of manufacturing innovation called NNMI, a network of 15 regional manufacturing and innovation hubs, all focusing on cutting-edge manufacturing technologies for the future. You hear of 3D printing, and you hear of laser processing and drones and all these kind of things. You hear of lightweighting. So all these are areas where governments of the most advanced countries in the world. There's a similar process going on in Germany. There's a similar process going on in Japan. There's a similar process going on in France. I mean, governments all over the world are doing exactly what we need to do, what I said a little while earlier. Get talent, put some money, get educational and research institutes, put them together, and fantastic results flow out. In India, I think there is even a more urgent need for us to build this ecosystem, this highly coherent ecosystem of 3 constituents: industry as one constituent, government to drive the policy as the second constituent, and academia and research institute as the third constituent. And if you look at our company, what we have done in the last 15, 20 years is exactly this. Except that we didn't have government as a constituent, because in the B2B business, after the liberalization, the government had very little role to play. But focusing on technology, focusing on research, focusing on futuristic areas is what we did to convert an old metal bashing business, which was full of manual labor and old technology, to a very sexy technology-driven business. And I think we were very successful in doing this, and many other companies have done the same thing. I hope you recognize this picture. This is the famous Albert Einstein. But you might not know the story of Albert Einstein. You know, a great patriot, educationist, editor, I'm just reading this, okay? Lawyer, civil register, jailbird, parliamentarian, a silver-tongued, transcendental orator, 3 times Congress president. Guess who he was? Anybody? Madan Mohan Malviya. He founded the Banaras Hindu University, BHU, in the late 30s. BHU, till the 70s, was considered as the #1 university in material sciences, in metallurgy, in the world. And after that, everything kind of just collapsed. And I will read an extract of a paper that was written by somebody from the BHU system. Malviya tried hard during 1935, 1936 to persuade the timeless legend in science and society, Albert Einstein, to come over to India and BHU for a suitable period. In his own terms, in perhaps some joint scheme and cooperation with Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer, Vice Chancellor of the Travancore University, now Kerala University. Sometime in 1940, which was about 4 years later, Einstein probably wrote to Malviya expressing his desire to serve this great university. Einstein had to make a choice whether to go to the United States or some other place. His first choice was BHU in 1940. Unfortunately, both Malviya and Radhakrishnan were away from their town, and his letter met with the usual bureaucratic procedure. By the time Malviya warmly invited him, Einstein was on his way to settling in America. I don't know how many of you know, and the point I'm really trying to make is we had a far better system in the 30s and 40s in our education, in the quality of people who were driving this process than we have today. And I think the current government, our Prime Minister, is trying to get us back to that level. And that's why the photo of Mr. Einstein. So a little bit on our story. We recognized early on in the 80s itself that manufacturing the way we used to manufacture before, with low technology, low capital investments, high level of manpower, was really not going to make us get anywhere. So we simply turned the whole business model upside down. We created a lever for energizing people and creating talent. We created a process using that talent to create technology. And 20 years later, which is now, we are using both those levers to create new engineering and new innovation. And that's really our story. It's the same thing that I just talked about. You put talent together, you put research capabilities together, and you put some capital together, and it can almost do wonders for you. So how would you put a talent system in place? This is what we did. We started with a very simple program to provide engineering education for our employees, a 3-year program. We started this almost 15 years ago. A few years later, we started a program with the help of Warwick University in the UK to provide a master's degree for our middle management. 6 years ago, we started a program with IIT Powai, a program that was specially designed for Bharat Forge to provide an MTech degree for our employees who would get into our research stream. It's a 2-year program. The first 2 were 3-year programs each. The end result is that these 3 programs have produced something like 12 to 1,400 talented people from the population of our operating class, which had no formal university or college education, but had a lot of experience running the shop floor. And of course, now we have started a PhD program to bring in even a higher understanding of science and innovation into our company. This has led us to be a supplier to almost every company in the world. This is a 100% Desi company. No technical collaborations, no technology coming from outside. Matter of fact, to most of our companies in Europe, technology flows from India into Europe rather than the other way around. And today, the customers I showed you, we have almost something like anywhere between 40 to 60% market share worldwide in the areas that we work in. And this is largely using the lever of talent, people who develop technology through research, and now using both together, doing engineering and innovation to get into all these new areas. You may not believe it, we took the challenge of the defense systems. In 2.5 years from scratch, we built a full artillery system from scratch, designed and manufactured. Nobody in the government would even believe us that we can do this. So my last message is that investing in human resources, building people capabilities, bringing in future technologies is the name of the game if India wants to get to its rightful place in the area of manufacturing and serve the world. Thank you.